Because even though America loves a comeback, in this digital age, your past can come back to haunt you.
It's become very apparent in recent decades that whether through various news outlets, certain parts of social media, and growing groups of people in general, they will shift their focus to digging up information they deem troublesome on certain public figures that they hold disdain for whatever reason. What was called a mob mentality years ago is now known as cancel culture today. Many perceive this movement as negative, and for good reason. But I feel before we can truly talk about cancel culture or this mob mentality today, I feel like we should go over past examples in our history, just to truly paint the picture of how this mob mentality has been handled and unhandled for the past centuries. In the mid-1950s, an Italian philosopher named Giordano Bruno was, whether intentional or not, a true fighter for free speech. Giordano was once skeptical of religious beliefs, which would later catch the attention of the Catholic Church. Nowadays, the thought of a person being atheist or just non-religious in general is nothing new or jarring. However, in that time, those who opposed the thought of religion were deemed a heretic, as were most of the scientists from that era. Somewhere down the line, Giordano found himself threatened by the Catholic Inquisition to retract his thoughts and opinions and words to appease them. He chose to stand by his opinions, which would later wound up getting him captured and taken to the Roman Inquisition and held in a cell for years. To what I've heard, he was given a few opportunities to retract his words over the years he was held, and he still chose to stand his ground. This would eventually result in his execution, where the Roman Inquisition was documented to have bound his tongue in a bloody mess and finally burned him at the stake in front of those who condemned him. Two things that I've held with me from learning about Giordano Bruno is the history of religion is kind of fucked up. The other thing is that when you look at this whole situation, it shows how, as a society that holds certain morals to a high standard, the way we gaslight those who oppose what we deem as troublesome or blasphemous is far worse than one's opposing thoughts. If we all chose to gaslight every single person that didn't hold the same standards as us, we will be causing a potential future where no one is able to think for themselves. No creativity or new ideas will ever be discovered or explored. Whether you are a religious person or not, I believe everyone should be entitled to believe whatever they choose as long as the actions they portray don't bring actual pain to anyone. I mean, in all seriousness, I just don't care what you believe in. I just want to make life a little less shitty for myself without some limp dicks ridiculing me. One of the more recent events of the past century involving people being ridiculed for creative expression is centered around rock music from the 70s and the 80s. Around that time, artists were becoming more provocative with showmanship in their performance, lyrics, and music videos. This caused the PMRC and Congress to make a fuss that would later put rock music in the spotlight to be censored or changed to be less satanic and sexually provocative, as it was deemed troublesome to the young teens of the time. I believe they are the reason you see parental advisory labels on albums that are described to have explicit content. Few artists would oppose and verbally state a case for not only them, but rock music as a whole. Dee Snider from Twisted Sister being one of those people. In 1984, Snider would sit in front of the PMRC and defend not only him and Twisted Sister, but in many ways, music for the future as a whole. Snider was invited, but looking at how the people were snickering at him as he walked in with his typical rocker fit, they didn't bring him there because they thought he'd be able to properly address the issues and prove them wrong. They brought him for the purpose of furthering their points on the thought that Snider would make a fool of himself. However, they greatly underestimated him. He spent weeks on his testimony that poked holes in the many claims of the PMRC about subliminal content in their songs, whilst making them feel stupid with his simple but well-thought responses.
What I said in one part was that songs allow a person to put their own imagination, experiences, and dreams into the lyrics. People can interpret it many ways. Ms. Gore was looking for sadomasochism and bondage, and she found it.
Needless to say, the PMRC was understandably shaken in silence and quite angry.
I said, I can't help that Tipper Gore's got a dirty mind, and Al Gore just, oh my God, he really jumped over the table.
Snider's most solid point as a parent himself is that if parents are truly worried about what media their child could be listening to or watching, they themselves should review the media to see if it is for their child.
Then what choice does a parent have? To sit down and listen to every song on the album?
Well, if they're really concerned about it, I think that they have to.
Do you think that's reasonable to expect parents to do that?
Being a parent isn't a reasonable thing. It's a very hard thing. I'm a parent and I know. I'm a new parent. I only have one child maybe, but I am learning that there's a lot to being a parent that you didn't expect. It's not just, oh, isn't baby cute?
It is not an artist's job to raise someone else's kid. And as we see the showmanship of many of the artists today, it's quite apparent.
How do you feel about, like, because you have young fans like that, and your lyrics are pretty explicit.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
You know what? I'm realizing that I don't have to deal with it. I'm not their parents.
Of course, by the end of it all, the PMRC found the request of reviewing all the media for the kids near impossible, so rather than take Snyder's request into factor, they went ahead and added censors to the music we listen to. Although this label was put on many records which kept a few listeners from hearing such media, today, it seems most teens and kids themselves are found to be listening to a lot of music labeled with explicit content. The fact this is so common is part of the fact that many young listeners know that music is simply an artist expressing their creativity. Though, even today, some people still believe that artists or creators of any media are responsible for changing the content of their own media to better suit someone else's standards. Now, over the next few decades from the 80s to the 2000s, dare I say, we got a little more edgy with the content that we started producing. To me, the golden age of people expressing themselves freely and just saying anything seems to be the mid-2000s. The internet was still fairly new to people, and obscene imagery and language was the norm. Dare I say, hurtful words meant little to nothing around this time because by this point, we had heard and seen a lot of offensive media to where we were kind of numb to it.
Come on! Do math!
However, as everyone is using social media now, there's groups of people that have developed a mentality where if someone says something they deem offensive, not even to them, but to any group of people in general, they'll go out of the way to ruin any social presence that a person has. Even today, I'm sure most people don't care about the words of another person, unless they're just trying to start a controversy for the little bit of attention that they lack in their lives. This wouldn't be an issue if certain companies and businesses that were behind most successful people weren't becoming pressured by this mob mentality. One of the most recent situations is one concerning rapper DaBaby. He looks like this. He was a meme for like a good few months. You know him. I feel it's necessary to bring up this incident because the reaction on behalf of the media is what usually leads to many people being quote-unquote cancelled. In this incident, DaBaby was given flack for saying supposed homophobic remarks, which sparked an outcry on Twitter. Big surprise. This would usually mean fuck all. People bitch about things on Twitter every day, and people brush off incidents like this in a week or so. However, this is one of the few incidents where the outcry on social media was loud enough to cause an immediate reaction. DaBaby was pulled from playing Lollapalooza by the organizers due to the backlash, and thus, we got this fake-ass apology post. Although social media successfully got DaBaby removed due to his remarks, this causes another issue that has become more common. Whether someone is homophobic, racist, or sexist, going out of your way to attack someone's livelihood or social presence will not change one's mindset, but rather reinforce their thoughts. And this in no way is defending a prejudiced mindset. This is merely showing how the reaction to these situations makes them far worse. Hell, oftentimes the people calling out others for the actions of another one's issues, they just want to act like they have something worth talking about. Artist Dua Lipa was one of the people to slam DaBaby for being homophobic when she had nothing to say, being associated with now deceased rapper Pop Smoke, who was also guilty of having said homophobic remarks in his own songs.
I can't fuck with these niggas cause niggas is gay. All in my page, sucking dick, all in my comments and screaming my name.
So yeah, something tells me bitch didn't really give a shit about the fags as much as she lets on. In today's day and age, we use social media to ridicule those we deem as problematic rather than actually converse and try to open them up to change their perception. It's the same thing as trying to deem certain comedians as problematic for making offensive jokes when you're not even looking to be humored.
How bored are you? This is why nobody of any reasonable, decent human being is gonna run for president. Because of you assholes. It's the millennials. You're a bunch of rats. All you're doing is trying to get people in trouble. That's all you're doing, taking pictures and recording people. He said this, but did he really mean that?
It's like the point of D. Snyder. If you look for something in a piece of media, whether it was intended or not, you're gonna find it. We have too many passive-aggressive and extremist people online that try to fight for what they deem is right, but just end up creating a bigger issue. Now, on the other half, people that are legitimately guilty of committing acts that are actually harmful to people in every way deserve backlash that goes their way. I'm a man for letting the punishment fit the crime. However, as far as people with prejudice goes, as long as there are men, women, different races of people, and just people in general, there will always be people that feel they have a superiority to maintain and surround themselves in hatred. The only thing you can really do to try to shift one's perception on something is sit down and have a one-on-one interaction. To end off this video, I'd like to break down possibly why this supposed cancel culture has reached the point it has, because after looking through stories and incidents highlighted by such people, I feel as though I've grown an understanding of it. See, after years of oppression to certain groups of people due to many misuses of power and corruption from the government to such groups of people, we as people together have tried our best to combat these corruptions in our system. After finally getting to a point where we can all gather together to speak our piece on social media with it being listened by many people in power, us, the random everyday person, being heard by those in power, that's an amazing thing that I'm not sure many of us realize. However, that's also where our biggest problems arise. Since the voices of many random people are being heard, there will always be those with extremist ideas, those that will go out of their way to make a big deal out of something that usually gets brushed off easily. You probably know somebody like this. You probably avoid telling them anything to possibly shift their opinion because you don't like the conflict. This issue of a group of people being built up to end someone else's career is also the result of us not keeping our own citizens in check. We either don't tell them anything, we just agree with them because, again, we just don't like the confrontation. And for some people, they are just agreeing with someone else because they're just trying to be a part of something to feel some level of self-importance. But the end result is us building up a group of people looking to tear down and not reconcile. We've in some ways been given too much power with not enough thought in how calmly to resolve an issue, but rather just to immediately shut it down. Now, there is a group of people out there that are calling this shit out for what it is: pointless protest. I feel many people, not just the random everyday person, is catching on to how harmful this culture truly is, but also those in power. In other words, I feel we will reach the time soon where we can finally learn to not leave the power of one person's success to a bunch of social justice retards, and learn to let the people that are willing to resolve an issue in an organized manner prosper and be heard. It all starts, though, with the thoughts of us, and our willingness to speak our minds. If anything throughout history has taught us anything, it is that we should not be silenced by those trying to drown us out and bring us down, but rather calmly speak our piece, stand by our word, and look to reconcile our disagreements. In other words, let's not allow us people to be the reason of our own downfall. That's all I have to say on this topic for now. Agree or disagree with anything I have to say? Speak your piece in the comments. Let's encourage discussion. If you enjoyed the video or found it enlightening in any way, leave a like. And if you're new, subscribe to the channel. I always try to make that premium content for the fellow viewers of this channel. And until the next video, bye bye. He spent weeks on his testimony that poked holes in the many claims of the PMRC about subliminal